Mutants are already gifted with amazing abilities that put them a cut above regular old humans like you and me. But then there are those mutants who get not one, but two mutations, giving them even more and more power, as if they needed it. The Blob, or Frederick Dukes, is one of those characters. Now, I really didn't give the Blob enough credit when I was growing up, and he can actually do some pretty cool things, and some things that didn't even occur to me. His actual main mutant ability, for example, is that he can essentially become immovable by creating a monodirectional increase of gravity beneath him that extends about 5 feet in radius from his center of balance. But what's even cooler is that, with some training, Blob was able to manipulate his gravitational aura outwards in order to trigger a localized implosion. Also, the Blob is incredibly durable. The fat on the Blob is able to absorb the impact of rifle bullets, cannonballs, bazookas, and even torpedoes. He has been able to survive being hit by a meteorite that was 50 feet in diameter, moving at terminal velocity, but that's not all. Blob is also able to manipulate his body, basically shapeshifting to a degree. After undergoing the Mother Vine enhancement process, Blob developed a secondary mutation, liquid form. Now, not actually, but his secondary mutation allowed him to stretch his body to a great extent, and the problem is the mutation was hard to control, so when he first ever manifested it, he stretched himself too far and basically turned into a puddle. Next up is Gambit, and Gambit has the really cool mutant ability of molecular acceleration, allowing him to convert the potential energy of a non-living object through touch and kinetically excite the molecules to the point that they explode. Usually when a mutant has an ability that manipulates molecules, they have a pretty vast array of powers, but for Gambit, he mainly just uses his abilities as attacks, charging up his signature playing cards and bow staff and other objects like that. We have seen him reach the full potential of his power, only this was an alternate reality version of the guy. He could manipulate kinetic energy down to a molecular level, which basically made him a god. But as you may have guessed, Gambit has a second mutation. After a traumatic event left him blind, a secondary mutation kicked in that allowed Gambit to be clairvoyant. Gambit's ability did not give him the power to consciously look into the future. Instead, his secondary mutation acted like a warning system, kinda like the spider sense. He could sense danger and react to it. Now, fortunately for him, Gambit got his sight back not long after losing it, meaning he stopped needing to rely on this secondary mutation, but he does still totally have it. Daken, or as he's going by now, Akihiro, possesses a lot of the same abilities as his father Wolverine. He has a crazy healing factor, superhuman senses, and of course, bone claws. But what some people may not be aware of is the one mutation he possesses that neither his father nor his sister/clone possesses. That power would be pheromone control. Daken has empathic ferrokinetic abilities that allow him to use his pheromones to manipulate the emotional state and sensory perception of others. He has used this ability to instill intense fear, happiness, depression, fascination, and a false sense of security in others. The false sense of security one is probably the most interesting, as it's allowed him to sneak up on others without them even worrying that he could be there. He also has used this ability to alter others' depth perception and vision, making them fight sluggishly. He can also control his own pheromones to make him basically untrackable, even to someone like Wolverine. There are limits to Daken's ferrokinesis, but it's such a cool ability. If you have seen the movie Logan, then you'll recognize Caliban as the blind, seemingly albino mutant who hangs out with Logan and Professor X. In that movie, he displays Caliban's main ability, which is being able to detect mutants' X genes, usually within a 25-mile radius. Although, it's worth noting he has been able to detect particularly powerful mutants from further away before. But what I want to talk about is Caliban's other power that most people don't know. This is called his flight or fight response. Whenever Caliban feels stressed, he manifests two extra powers: super strength that can overpower Spider-Woman, and fear absorption. This second power allowed Caliban to absorb the psionic energy created in the fear from others and amplify it back into his environment, doing things like very quickly turning those nearby into a fear-induced panicked mob. This ability was boosted up by Apocalypse twice when Caliban served him as both death and pestilence. The mutant Toad has been a member of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, and by extension a part of the mutant community for a hot minute, but in my opinion, Mortimer Toynbee has hasn't really been utilized as much as he should be given his massive list of abilities. Toad has a degree of superhuman strength, specifically in his back and legs, which allows the little weirdo to jump around 25 to 37 feet, and he'll kick you so hard that you are never getting back up again. He's got flexible bone structure, superhuman stamina, durability, reflexes, and agility. Toad, like a lot of super beings, has a regenerative healing factor, but unlike a lot of mutants, he has UV vision, a super strong 30-foot prehensile tongue, acidic saliva, sticky paralytic resin out of his pores, and pheromone secretion. I can understand why he isn't exactly at the top of the mutant landscape, partially because he's kind of really gross and just overall unpleasant, but he does have a hell of a lot of abilities to offer. The X-Force member known as Shatterstar, a lot like Toad, just has a huge list of abilities that just keeps getting added to. Gavidra 7 learned the arts of battle as a warrior in arenas on Mojo World, where he developed both a sense of honor and incredible fighting skill, but those aren't his abilities. He possesses a large superhero starter pack: superhuman strength, speed, agility, stamina, durability, senses, reflexes, agility, dexterity, coordination, balance, plus a regenerative healing factor and even enhanced learning ability. Now curiously, he actually has hollow bones as well, which makes him lighter than you would think, but also further boosts up his natural physical skills. Now the cool part of Shatterstar are his Mojoverse swords, which he can use with his mutant ability to channel powerful vibratory shockwaves, which can be absolutely devastating but also drains him of energy. But also, after his Mojo time, he can now create X-shaped portals that have to be linked to another person who acts as an anchor for said portals, if that makes any sense. These also drain him, and he has a cooldown of about 4 days before he can do it again, because this powerhouse needs some kind of balancing of some sort. Next up is Sage. Sage is basically a super genius, with a brain more powerful than any computer in the world, granting her perfect memory and rapid analytical abilities. She can come up with the perfect plan in an instant, learn just about any skill without having to practice, remember everything she's ever experienced, perform multiple tasks at once by allocating a partition of her brain to each task, and, thanks to training with Professor X, she can engage in telepathy. Her telepathic abilities allow her to detect minds and read them, project thoughts, astral projection, cast realistic mental illusions, and she even has a kind of psionic defense unique to her called her firewall. But it doesn't even stop there, as Sage even has some biokinetic abilities as well, including reading another mutant or person's genetic code and DNA, being able to literally see who someone's related to, jump-starting latent or enhancing current mutant abilities, and she has complete control over her physical body, being able to expel nanobots from her body by controlling her immune system, almost like highly advanced antivirus. She needs more time in the spotlight, that's all I'm saying. Next up is Wolfsbane. Rain Sinclair has the mutant ability that I kinda wish I had when I was a wee little lad. She can turn herself into a wolf at will, and can even go into a transitional form that is basically as close to a werewolf without being a werewolf as you can get. In fact, she is basically a werewolf, but with none of the drawbacks of being that kind of monster. She retains all her faculties minus not being able to talk and just being a little tiny bit feral, and is not forced to change only at nighttime. Rain grows much larger than her human form when she changes, and gains access to some enhanced strength, a healing factor, and enhanced vision, which coupled with the body of a wolf grants her enhanced speed and reflexes as well. But then she got a secondary mutation, and it's a weird one. After becoming an agent of Mutations in X-Men Blue number 9, she gained the ability to somehow transform into a pack of 5 wolves, and on top of that, her general wolfy-like characteristics, like claws and teeth and all that jazz, also became stronger and sharper on top of that. Paige Guthrie is part of a family that has a lineage of mutant abilities. Sam Guthrie, Cannonball, Joshua Guthrie, Icarus, Melody Guthrie, Arrow, and Jebediah Guthrie are all part of her family. Paige's power is a wee bit unorthodox though. She has the ability to shed her skin, and by concentrating on specific chemical or elemental formulas, she can cause the layer of skin underneath to be a different element or shape or state. With that power, she's been able to have skin made of metal, diamond, granite, wood, rubber, glass, and one time she even managed to basically turn into a lizard, which should be a secondary ability all by its own. Husk has always had troubles with her powers, such as not being able to morph multiple times without intense pain. However, in Generation X, it got a little bit worse when Paige started suffering from dramatic mood swings and patchwork morphs. It was then revealed later that her secondary mutation also causes her to change personalities every time she morphs, and that can cause her to act out or even black out. And last but not least, as the daughter of Magneto, Poalaris actually has pretty much exactly the same abilities as him. She can control and manipulate magnetic fields, allowing her to create force fields, fly on the Earth's magnetic field, emit magnetic concussive pulses that can overload and short circuit electrical systems, and so much more. But there was a very short period of time where she gained a power we have never seen from her father. When the villainess Daken stripped Lorna of her powers, leaving her completely vulnerable, the jolt of losing said powers forced Poalaris' latent secondary mutation to evolve. Poalaris was now able to absorb negative emotional energy to transform into a virtual powerhouse. She grew in height and gained super strength, durability, and invulnerability. Basically, Poalaris can Hulk out. Now, after regaining her magnetic powers, Lorna lost her Hulk-like abilities, but it is still technically something that she could do until the Scarlet Witch caused M-Day, which got rid of the ability altogether. But that's all I got. Thank you guys so much for watching today on Top 10 Nerd. I'm your host, Adam Andrews. I will catch you all on the flippy flop. Until then though, be sure to stay safe and peace out, nerds.